Hi, and welcome to our show today. We have the author of several books here. One of them is Breaking Barriers, and this is a book for everyone, civilians and police, talking about what the police undergo and the pressure and stress that they undergo and what can be done about it. So we have a former police officer here who's also a professor and an author, and he's going to be talking to us about the difficulties that they encounter. So I want to welcome our guest, Ron Rufo. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Karen. So nice to be here.
Yes.
It's a pleasure. I appreciate you having me on.
Well, we appreciate you being here. So I want to talk about your books. Is this your most current one?
Yes, it is. That's my fourth book, Breaking the Barriers.
Okay.
And
What made you write that book?
Well, a few reasons. I was a peer support team leader for 20 years with the Chicago Police, and
What does that mean?
well, in peer support, it's where we were asked or we applied to be an officer that would help other officers.
No, I see.
And I was accepted, and I was on peer support for 2 years before I became a team leader, which I also had 10 officers underneath me that I went out with every, I would say maybe once a month, put it that way.
Well,
So-
I know it's a difficult job.
Yes.
And it's gotten more difficult now. And, I think I was telling you earlier that I was the head nurse in a psychiatric unit, charge nurse in the evening, and it's very difficult to deal with people who are very strong and acting crazy. We had more things at our disposal that we could do about that when someone fought with us. It seems like now police officers are supposed to stand there and absorb whatever anybody does to them,
That's
which is horrible.
hard part of the job. And I just go back with on peer support though, it's officers rarely do not ask for help. We help everyone, but rarely do we get the help that we need. Peer support is one way for an officer to talk to another officer about any problems. The main thing is not to judge an officer with some of the issues they may be going through. Could be critical incidents, something that they've handled that bothers them, like PTSD. I don't like to say PTSD, maybe PTSI, post-traumatic stress injury instead of a disorder. But after a while, so many injuries lead to maybe PTSD. And the confidentiality where they can speak to someone and it's not going to hurt them. Like if you came to talk to me, I don't even tell my wife who I spoke to, if it was a girl, a guy, what even we spoke
Well,
about.
it's kind of like nurses. We don't tell anybody anything either,
Right.
or mention anything by name,
Right.
obviously.
And officers are more likely to talk to another officer than if talking to a counselor or psychologist. They don't want to say, oh, I'm not crazy, I just need to talk to somebody. But that's one of the issues with peer support, is that I went on so many police suicides that it seemed like the administration wasn't doing anything about it.
What was the cause of those?
On
Was
police
there a
suicide?
specific thing that caused that?
Well, I went on probably about 6 suicides, and it's like the elephants in the room and nobody wants to talk about it. I'd say a lot of it, I'd say out of the 4 of the 6, alcohol had something to do with it, and was a big proponent of why this person committed suicide. I had 5 guys and 1 girl that I went on personally with as a peer. And it was just a shame, just to see that somebody
so the
has
job gave so much pressure that they drank, or they were alcoholics that happened to be on the job? I mean, which came first?
I wouldn't say they're alcoholics. They may have just drank that day, or maybe led up to the drinking.
To kill the pain?
Maybe kill the pain, kill the suffering that they had inside. And it was one way for them to end the pain. Alcohol's a depressant. They're depressed, maybe seeing no light at the end of the tunnel, and what happens is it
Well,
might be a spur of the
horrible
moment.
things. Like I know one policeman said he had to leave homicide because he couldn't stand looking at injured or dead children
Right.
by, at somebody's hand.
And I think the children is something that affects almost every officer. Any officer that has to deal with any type of child that passes away, or children, there's numerous that have occurred, that it affects you. It really
Well, we
does.
had a case at Mount Sinai when I worked in the ER of a 6-month-old baby that was raped by her uncle. So, I mean, when you're seeing things like that all the time, it has to affect your psyche.
It does. Or working in the unit that with sexual predators and looking online at child porn all the time. It's got to bother you at some point. I don't think they could stay on in that unit all the time. Again, unless they could be the strongest person, but we're human. It's going to affect you at some point. So that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book, changing the way we support the physical and mental wellness of police officers. When you go into the academy, they teach you all about tactical training, watch the person's hands, everything else that way. When I was in the academy, we did not have one class on emotional wellness, what to do after, how to protect ourselves. And I think we really need to change that and get that stigma out for asking for help. Asking for help is not, we look at it as, police officers look at it as a crutch, as a weakness.
Well, you know, patients used to ask me in the psych unit when they were getting discharged, you know, what am I going to tell my neighbors I was in a psych unit? What am I going to tell my relatives? I said, tell them you were checked out and you've been discharged. Have they?
Yeah, right. That's so important. So officers don't want to have that label or that stigma. So sometimes they,
well, nobody does.
No, but if you even ask for help, just say I called 911 and talk to the dispatcher and say, listen, I'm a Chicago police officer and I've got a gun and I want to kill myself. It's on tape. Not only is it on tape, the state police will come back to you, take your gun, and your shield and your FOID card. Without a FOID card, you cannot carry a weapon. You cannot become a police, or you cannot stay a police officer. You're out of a job. Right. So not only do I need help, but I just dug myself a bigger hole. That really is detrimental to any officer. Now there's no chance or a slim chance of ever coming back.
And I think people should think twice about it. They make complaints about police officers. You know, we were talking earlier about Paul Harvey. He has a great thing on the internet about a police officer and how that there's a lesser amount of police officers that are bad than there are clergy that are bad.
Right.
And you know how if they're nice to you, they're a flirt. If they're nasty to you, they're a grump. Right. You know, if they have to negotiate what would happen in court with lawyers and judges that go on for weeks or months, they have to decide in a second. You know, negotiate situations like that.
It's a great clip.
They're under a lot of pressure, and if anybody wants to look it up, if you look up Paul Harvey, a policeman, it's like a 3-minute thing that you really like. But I think the public needs to know that that thin blue line is what protects us from danger, and they can't just keep picking on policemen and expect them to be able to protect us. It's
100% true.
I mean, they're having enough trouble without being picked on by civilians.
Karen, definitely. Police officers have 3 things that they have to deal with. One is the administration, always being worried. Like if you came in as a commander, now are you going to take me off my car, my beat, my watch? And the next thing is being the police itself, who we deal with. We never know what we're going to encounter. It could be a simple, like I was talking to you before about a simple assault that happened and what happened, and we both ended up in the hospital. Things happen. You don't know.
I had psych patients that used to escape sometimes, and then they'd go and beat up somebody, and the police would have to bring them back, and they'd be fighting with them. And, you know, we had medications at our disposal to give them, but the police didn't.
No. And that's a hard thing to control, someone that may just react without...
And they're very strong when they want to be.
Right, especially if they're on drugs, especially like PCP, like this young man was.
Right.
And then the next thing is family, is the third thing that we have to deal with. So you're not only working a lot, you're, and again, now we have a lot of officers working 12-hour shifts. I talk about sleep in my book. When do you sleep? And if they do sleep, they don't sleep well. Have you ever were in a position where you were tired and you were crabby because you were tired, you didn't get enough sleep? And then if this the littlest thing may set you off or bother you, and that happens a lot with police officers.
Or your reaction time is
your
different.
reaction.
Right.
Your reaction's slow, but
you know, it's funny, like in the psych unit, patients would follow you around, and if they were alcoholics, and say you were out the night before and had a few drinks, they could tell right away. They'd say, well, you drank a few drinks last night or something.
Right,
you know?
right.
Even though you weren't doing anything excessively, they could identify it right away.
Right. They always have something to look at that way. So, and maybe blame you in a way too. So.
Yeah. You know, and like I said, I can identify the psych unit with that because it's scary when people are on the edge and they have to be controlled somehow. And people who've never done this or never experienced it have no idea how scary it can be. I had a patient one time that was pacing back and forth outside the nurse's station. Fortunately, prior to that, he thought I reminded him of somebody he liked. So although he gave other people problems, he didn't give me any problems. And that particular day he was pacing back, and I knew that the attack was coming, you know. But he went into his room and he came back. He said, "You don't know how lucky you are because the voices told me to kill you." And that can happen, and it happens on the street all the time.
Right.
And policemen have to deal with this, and people say, "Oh, that's easy to do." Well, yeah, try it yourself and see how easy it is. You know,
it's not so easy. Especially, you know what, with when I first came on, a lot of the old timers would say, "Hey, kids, suck it up," and it's how much can you suck up after a while without it bothering you? I kind of compared it to like a wheelbarrow. For every traumatic incident that you experience, you throw a brick into that wheelbarrow. So after a while, after many years, that wheelbarrow is going to have a tremendous amount of bricks, and what's going to happen? You can't maneuver it. It's going to spill
well, it's
over.
like a river that has sludge that keeps
Right.
coming.
It's going to spill over, and what happens is it's going to bother us emotionally, and something's going to happen. I was in the academy, and one of my instructors said, when we first came on, in our first weeks of the academy, he said, "Who's married here?" So we had about 35 in our class, 35 guys and girls, most of the guys though. And they said, "I want you to stand up, whoever's married." So probably about 25 guys stood up, and he said, 80% of you will be divorced by time your career is ended. And I got to tell you, it is almost to 80% of those guys that.
Why is that? Because of
It's
the
just
hours?
not only the hours, the stress. Not all these officers have the ability to talk to their significant other, a guy or girl, husband, wife, whatever it is, boyfriend, girlfriend, about what they experienced. And again, especially if it's a child, how do you go talk to your husband or wife about a child that was killed? I got to tell you, one tragic story that happened to me was a 4-year-old girl shot in the eye. It bothered me. It bothered me for a long time. And that's another reason why I wrote the book. I couldn't tell this story 15 years ago. So it was a little girl shot, and I just kept it inside me. And I had 3 daughters. So, and one of them was about that little girl's age, and it just literally bothered me.
Well, I guess that's why a lot of nurses and policemen got together.
Right.
They asked us why we didn't all marry doctors. We said because they thought they were God's gift to women. But it was like they married teachers because we knew they could make mistakes. But there was a lot of nurses and policemen that got married.
Right. And we're finding a lot, police officers maybe married 2-3 times, 4 times. It's just unbelievable how many times officers get married and get divorced.
They have a lot of opportunities too.
Oh, quite a bit, quite a bit, yes.
But so what do we say is the answer here?
I like to make it mandatory. Officers have to shoot once a year to qualify with their weapons. I like to make it mandatory where they have to see a psychologist, a counselor, a therapist, someone to talk to, mandatory, so to take that stigma out. Even if they sit there for an hour and not say anything, or a couple hours, whatever they need. But to make it mandatory where they would have to go. So more people go, so it doesn't say, "Hey, Ron Rufo went to see a therapist.
Well,
Something's
maybe
wrong with
everybody
him.
should
He
have
might
to
be
do
the
that.
weak link."
Yeah.
I don't want him to back me up. But if everybody has to go, I think that's what we need. And we're starting to see that a little bit more now in the police academies than we ever did before. Way before before I came on, they didn't have that at all. Again, we didn't have not one emotional class of wellness or anything. It was just suck it up, kid. See you at the bar.
Who did? Nobody really had that.
Nobody had it. No, but I got it. Who takes care of the
The only
officer
people
once they
that I
leave
knew
that?
that were forced into analysis were psychiatrists who were becoming a specialized analytical psychiatrist. They all had to undergo analysis, and I'll tell you, it broke a lot of them down, their whole personality. But they had to go under extreme analysis.
Right.
But everybody should have to do that. But this has got to be the hardest job in the world. I mean, really, when you think about it. And now they say stand there and take it. I mean, they never told us as nurses to stand there and take it from somebody. But what job tells you to stand there and take abuse?
Right. Especially when I first came on, it was, "Kid, stand up. You know what? Suck it up. That was the word.
Well,
Suck it
Paul
up.
Harvey said something about, I don't know if I'm quoting this right, but he said, if a police officer hits you, he's a bully. If you hit him, he's a coward.
Right.
So you can't win either way.
Sometimes you just can't win. We wear so many different hats when we're out on the street. Psychologists, we're everything. We're marriage counselors. We do it all.
Well, when
we
I
go
was
out
in
there.
nursing school one time, one of the policemen offered to go pick us up a pizza, and it was on his break, and we handed him a $10 bill or something. Just somebody called in and said he took a bribe. And he didn't take a bribe.
Right,
It had
right.
nothing to do with a bribe. He was just going to pick up a pizza for the ER, you know.
How people look at things, you just don't know. Now, especially with cameras today, with cell phones, taking pictures,
Of
that
everything.
you don't see what may have happened before. You're just seeing the end result.
It's out of context.
Out
yeah.
of context. And again, a lot of police officers today, I really feel sorry for them. I wanted my 3 daughters to become cops. I am so glad they all went a different way.
I almost did it once. I
Okay.
almost did it. And I passed the test and everything. And then they called me and I said, I don't know. I might be afraid to be in the house alone at night, much less to
Right,
be in a squad
right.
car, you know. And
So-
women also have the additional problem is that most of us are brought up not to fight with somebody or not to even respond if we're injured. I mean, and they do have to fight back, and they do have to fight, and we're not conditioned to do that, most women, or to shoot somebody if you have to.
Right. It's the training in the academy that it kind of teaches, it kind of changes you in a way. You can kind of be a naive person going in, but after a while, I would like to say in 25, 30 years, a lot of cops become salty. They almost hate everyone, hate everything.
The ones
Again,
I knew never did, though.
well, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Well, some are, they maybe on their second or third marriage, they've changed. They've become critical, cynical maybe is another word that I could use. But now we're finding it 10, 12 years on the job. We're seeing that instead of 20, 25 years on the job.
Well, that's because
at
everyone's
12 years.
picking on them.
That's a big.
I mean,
that
who
is
goes
very
to
big.
work and has a camera on them all the time and gets picked on all day long?
Yes.
And gets complaints made against them no matter what they do. I mean, who else does that? I mean, you have CEOs of companies that do major things that are wrong. Nothing ever happens to them.
Right. That's what I said. You have to worry about the administration, the job itself, and family. Those 3 things. That's
And
why
you never know
officers
if you're
are
gonna
having a
come
hard
home.
time.
You never know if you're gonna come home when you
Today
come
may
in.
be my last day on the job, but again, we have more police suicides than we do have in line of duty deaths. So that has to tell you something. Emotionally, we're hurting as officers. We really are. When I wrote my police suicide book, it was just unbelievable the tragedy that we were seeing out there. The elephants in the room. Nobody wants to talk about it.
Well, because they see the worst part of life.
Yeah.
Like they say, they have to keep the lid on the garbage can.
Right, right. That's
It's
something
true.
that's that we're having issues with all the
Now,
time.
you wrote several other books, though.
Yes, I have. My first book I wrote that I've written was on sexual predation. It was sexual predators amongst us. My dissertation topic was criminal investigation of online sexual predators.
And we're going to do a show on that.
Yes,
Okay.
that's the next show.
Go ahead.
And I wrote that, and then my next book is Police and Profiling in the United States. I wrote that with another professor that I've worked with, and is applying theory to criminal investigation. So I have a lot of sexual predation in there as well. And then my next book is Police Suicide. Is police culture killing our officers? And I believe the culture that we're dealing with every day, again, not
Well, nobody
sleeping
stands
well.
up for them. The politicians don't stand up for them until, like they want everybody to get rid of guns. But the politicians don't want their bodyguards to get rid of guns.
No.
They can have them.
It's like a double standard. And
Triple
again,
standard.
Right. And then my last book is Breaking the Barriers. And I'm pretty fortunate I was able to get my rights back for my police suicide. I'm going to rewrite that one. But I'm not just going to call it police suicide. I'm going to make it first responder suicide. I was just a couple of weeks ago, I was at a
With firemen.
firemen at a peer support for firemen, and they deal with the same things that police officers
So do nurses. You should write one for
Everything,
that.
yeah, right. I believe all first responders. I believe first responders, nurses could be first responders for
Well,
what they see.
especially ER nurses. I mean, I
Yeah.
worked in the ER, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that you.
It's got to bother you. It's got to affect you one way or the other.
It really didn't. I really have to say it didn't. But
Well-
I mean, things have gotten worse and worse and worse. And I do read articles about other nurses now that have had to be subjected to things in the emergency room. Everything now is worse. I mean, there were certain things we had to worry about, like syphilis and gonorrhea and things like that, with blood transference and
Right.
everything. But now they have all these other diseases to add to it. So,
Right. And I think COVID is probably one that everybody has to
Mm.
worry about as well.
yeah, you do and you don't. But like I said, would have had to worry every day when I went to work. If you thought about it, every day you never knew who you were going to be in contact with.
Right.
So, but that's the job.
Your tolerance is pretty high, so that's good. Again, most officers, they're pretty high too, but after a while, again, those bricks in the wheelbarrow, something's got to give
Well, we
after
didn't
a
have
while.
everybody picking on us every day either,
Yeah.
politically,
Right, right.
and on television. I mean, nurses were considered respected and everything. So were policemen for a long time. And then things flipped for no reason.
Right.
But,
Well, we need the support of politicians. We really do. And instead of defunding the police, we've got to help the
gotta
police
refund them.
officers more. We have to
and increase
really
them.
thank an officer when you
Well,
see
I
them.
had to laugh for a while when they said social workers were going to take their places, because I've worked with social workers my whole life. And you could see right away that was stopped, because I'm sure they made it known that they weren't going to run out to save you at 2 o'clock in the morning or run into a building or go after somebody. I mean, that's not the kind of things social workers do.
Right.
And don't call to complain to me if you're a social worker, because none of them that I ever knew wanted to do that.
You need to be a special person to be a fireman,
Well,
a
yeah,
policeman,
right.
anyone on the
When
line.
everyone else runs away from danger, they run into danger.
Right.
Right.
I respect firemen because they're running into a burning house.
Right.
I told a few firemen friends that I would rather chase a guy with a gun, because I know I may have a chance. With a fire, you never know what's going to
Yeah,
happen.
you never know what's going to
But
happen.
again, any first responders, there's always that risk of danger that
Well, it's like someone else's life is more important than your own.
may take your life. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
So how do people get your book?
I have on
Books.
my website, I have ronrufo.com. It's RONRUF like Frank O.com. And I also have through Amazon. You can buy it through Amazon
You
as
have a
well.
seminar coming up.
Yes,
I don't know
have.
if this will be seen before or after, but when is it?
Hopefully it will. The 13th and 14th of April at Triton College. We have 6 speakers. One of them as well. It's a free seminar. They just have to register, and it's
You said there's
a lot
breakfast
of
and lunch
breakfast
included.
is included, and so is lunch. And
almost
can't
worth it,
beat a
right?
free seminar and that as well.
What's the topic?
It is wellness. It's police wellness, yes. And
So is it basically for police officers or
it's for everybody. Every first responders,
Okay.
but even a family member of a first responder, they're welcome. We welcome everybody. We have about 400 seats that we can fill. Especially with COVID, we were a little worried about maybe every other seat.
What time does it start?
It starts 8 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon on the 13th and 14th
Of April.
of April. Yes.
And you can register where?
You can register. I have, I should put it on my website where they can get it. I
And your
have
website
it.
is
Responder First. Responder First might be, they have it on his website. It's Doug Monda, M-O-N-D-A. It's
they
Responder
can
First.
go to your
I can
website.
get that website,
So it's RONR.
RUFO.com. I'll make sure it's going to be on my website when we're done here.
Okay, very good. Is there one last thing I haven't asked you that you'd like to say? We've only got a few minutes left.
I want to thank you for bringing the emotional wellness to light with police officers struggle with on a day-to-day basis.
I grew up respecting police officers, and I've seen them help 1 million people working in the emergency room, on the street, things like that, so I have a great respect for them. But I have to thank Maria Panessa.
Right. And
Because
for
she's the
Miranda,
one that connected
Right.
us.
I think that's wonderful. See, that's what it is. Sometimes it's networking that gets the word out, and that's the whole thing is I like to get the word out to everyone that it's okay to get help. If you're having an issue, you're having a problem, go speak to someone in peer support or a counselor. Even take call me on my cell. I'll even give out my cell number if you'd like, and to give me a call if you're having
Go
an
ahead.
issue. It's 773-616-3404. give me a call if you're struggling.
We're going
Or
to repeat it. We'll repeat it again in a minute so that if anybody didn't have a pencil, that they can give a minute to.
Okay, even if they're having an issue, or I could recommend a therapist if they need one, or even a few if they're. Not everybody's going to be happy with a therapist they're talking to, or a peer support team member. Sometimes you might be able to relate with me, and someone else may not be able to.
Well, like I said in psych, if you reminded a patient of somebody that they liked, you were in like Flint with them and you could help them. If you reminded them of something they didn't like, it didn't work out. And I want to mention Maria Panessa is a great hairdresser. She has not done my hair in years because of the pandemic and everything else. And do not give her credit for this. She did a wonderful job on me, but this is not her.
Well, she does my wife's hair as well, and she loves it. So she's a talented woman.
I haven't been able to go to her in years, so do not blame her for that. Okay, so now that people have had time to get maybe a pencil or a paper, you can give
my number is 773-616-3404. Please text me. Sometimes I don't take numbers that I don't recognize, and I will. If you say you saw this on the program and you need to talk, I will call you right back.
One more time.
773-616-3404. Thank you.
I always don't like that when I hear a number and I can't get something fast enough to write
to hear
it down.
that number, right?
I used to be able to memorize them because I had a photographic memory, but it ran out of film. So.
Well, thank you, Karon. I really appreciate it, and your staff for having me.
I want to mention one more thing. He did not write this book at all, but I found this. This was sent to me by Dr. Frederick Salaman many years ago about washing your hands, and now it's a big thing with the pandemic, how important it is. A practical and surprising guide for anyone concerned with healthcare and hygiene, especially men, because sometimes men don't wash their hands.
You're right.
And they really should.
I agree.
It's really important. And I got 2 minutes, so I'm going to mention something. Your books might fall down now. These were sent to the show. These are very unique, and we were talking about firemen. This is called the firedepartmentcoffee.com, and they have specialized spirit-infused coffee, medium roast, and the other one is spirit-infused, and it's got liquor in it, I believe. I don't know. But anyway, it's firedepartmentcoffee.com, and it's unique. One of them has in vanilla bean, and the other one has toffee, butterscotch, and vanilla here. Fire Department, only it's firedeptcoffee.com if you're interested in that. And I guess it was firemen that developed
it, right?
You know, we used to go to the firehouse for dinner once a week when I was in nursing school.
Okay.
And they made some of the best meals ever.
Oh, God, yes.
Yeah,
on my beat, we would go to the firehouse all the time. It was
you?
wonderful. It was a great time.
Yeah.
Great time. I love being on the job.
Spirit-infused coffee by firedepartment.com. Okay, you can also email me at asktvnurse@yahoo.com for further information on the show. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Ron, and we're going to talk to you again about sexual predation.
Great. I look forward to it.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.